Member from Cowichan Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the Minister through you. The Shawnigan Lake watershed is a major concern, as are other watersheds. The Cowichan River watershed region is also a major concern for the constituents in the Cowichan Valley. But I want to start by focusing on the questions I have about the Shawnigan Lake watershed. Briefly, I want to go over just a few paragraphs that was actually signed off by a Liberal, a representative of the Green Party, the Conservative Party, and the NDP. And so I think it's important that the Minister be aware of the fact that this is a all-party commitment to the Shawnigan region. And it goes like this: the safety of drinking water for the residents of Shawnigan Lake is under threat because of a plan to dump contaminated industrial waste within our community's watershed. Local residents, drawing on expertise provided by respected independent scientific consultants, such as hydrologists, have repeatedly raised concerns about the proposal, yet the Ministry of Environment has issued a draft permit. Residents are concerned about contamination of aquifers and nearby water sources and are unconvinced of the proponents' planned containment works that they'll be sufficient. Ensuring clean drinking water for thousands of residents in the area is an issue that crosses all party lines. The undersigned jointly are calling on the Ministry to not issue a permit, which has been done, by the way, until the science-based modeling and knowledge gaps are filled and all the community's outstanding concerns are addressed. I know that it's still under review, but I want to continue on with part of the concern that we have about the science-based questions being answered. And one of my questions is about receiving a response from a contractor consultant hydrologist rather than from the Minister to my letter to the Minister. And I guess I start with that question. Is that normal procedure for an MLA to receive a letter back from Active Earth, who I believe are a contractor working for the proponent in the project, and he's answering me, and he starts off his letter, this Active Earth is at the top of his letter, and it says, "This is a response to your letter addressed to the Honourable Dr. Terry Lake."
Thank you. That wouldn't be ordinary practice. Typically, if there was a need to have further response from those who were in the ministry or some other expert, the minister would respond, outline that in fact they had received your letter and had referred a response to someone else who maybe was more appropriate. At the same time, though, I have not seen the letter, and so I'm not aware. Perhaps the gentleman mentioned who wrote the letter could have been copied on the letter and may have chosen to respond even if he was not asked to respond.
Member?
Yes, and I'm happy to give you a copy of the letter and a copy of the petition that was signed by the all-party petition. Just a few minutes more in terms of my questions, but Minister, I urge you to do everything within your authority and discretion to protect drinking water supply of 7,000 of my constituents, primarily the Shawnigan region, that feel under threat. As MLA representing the Shawnigan Lake residents, I urge you to immediately direct your ministry to address the community's outstanding concerns, to fill in the science-based modeling and knowledge gaps that to date we believe have been ignored. I am advised that the province has failed to respond to the concerns outlined by hydrologist D.A. Lowen, who has made specific concerns available to your government relating to the lack of protections proposed for the community's drinking water and the integrity of the watershed. His report contained the following recommendations, which I have yet to have a response from the ministry. As I've just said, my response came from a contractor, and I don't feel that that's adequate response. When I write a letter to the ministry, I don't expect to get a letter back from some contractor with a passing reference to a minister. It just doesn't fly with me. This independent hydrologist who has, very lengthy qualifications as a hydrologist, has written independently that, and his recommendations are, and there's just 4 of them, a comprehensive environmental impact study must be completed before the site could be approved for disposal. These kinds of studies are mandatory for wastewater disposal, which is a smaller risk than contaminated soil. 2, the construction of monitoring wells, aquifer testing, water quality sampling, and contaminant flow modeling should be undertaken to assess the suitability of this site. 3, the site should have a leak detection system and a contamination containment plan. Commonly, contaminated groundwater is pumped out of the aquifer and piped to a treatment plant. Naturally, all of these necessary risk reduction measures are very costly. Therefore, some kind of long-term financing plan would also be required. Cost or benefit analysis should be carried out to ensure that this proposal is sustainable. I will attach the entire report for your immediate personal review, and I strongly believe the community is entitled to a fulsome written response from the ministry and from your offices. And finally, will the minister commit today to ensure the community receives a response to all of those DA loan hydrologist questions, and will you commit to work with the community further on their desire to have more community control of their watershed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I first just want to advise the member that we'll look into the particular letter that he was speaking about in the beginning and ensure that an appropriate response is received from the minister's office. With respect to then the discussion, it's important to note that the draft permit that has been issued is for consultation purposes only. It doesn't authorize any discharge of waste. We have to date received about 300 submissions from the local government, First Nations, health officials, members of the general community, and our technical staff are taking the time to review all of those to ensure that they are all responded to. And I should also note that in response to concerns raised by the public, the Ministry of Health, the CVRD, and local VHA officials had all raised concerns regarding the geology, hydrology of the site. As a result of that, we've gone a step further. We've asked the British Columbia Geological Survey to conduct its own independent assessment in relation to the application, and that's been complete, and this information is now being shared with the groups that I just listed off. Lastly, this is a decision that will be made by statutory decision makers. So the ministry staff will make that decision. It is not interfered with by politicians like myself. It's based on science, it's based on evidence, and as such, it keeps at arm's length from ministers like myself. The staff who are engaged in that process are professionals. They have many years of experience in assessing these types of applications. In the event that there is an approval and the community finds it disagrees with the decision, there is, if they so choose, there is an environmental appeal board process that is open to them if the decision that is ultimately reached is not one with which they agree.
Member?
Thank you, and I will get these documents to you. The final question I have is regarding the Cowichan River, and I appreciate in question period the other day that you talked about professionals, relying on professionals in the decision making. Well, I guess that was to do with the Shawnigan watershed. The issue here is the fact that people feel that the professionals that are where there is a number of them. There's certainly the hydrologist, but then we've got DFO, you've got biologists and others who had great concerns about the issues of fish in the Cowichan River. And I've told this story in the House, but it's worth repeating, that I actually was approached by the CVRD chair, 3 mayors, First Cowichan Tribes First Nation representing 6 different bands, and they requested me to support them in meeting with the Minister of Forest about the issue of water. And I know that there's an interagency, according to the water stewardship document on the Ministry of Environment's website. They talk about the guidelines for watershed management, and they talk about an interagency task force, and I assume that's still in place between the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Forest. But and I understand that you're responsible for Water Modernization Act. So on behalf of all of the various groups that have stepped forward in the Cowichan Valley that want to see more local control of watersheds, you know, I would either urge you to come up and meet with some of those groups, and so I guess I'm requesting that the minister either take time to come and actually meet with the round table, the Cowichan River groups that are there, and talk to them firsthand about the number of difficulties in managing the freshwater, the river system, and it's a heritage river. It's under your ministry. There are so many different groups that really would appreciate the opportunity to raise their issues and to hear from you directly on whether or not there is any interest on working with the communities to give some level of community control that would be helpful in the future. And I personally believe that should you work towards that kind of collaborative approach, there could be solutions found. I know that that was something that I had hoped to see one day, is the fact that we sit down with community, and I know there are certain responsibilities that would have to remain with the provincial government, but some of them, like what happened with the Cowichan River, where we ended up trucking fish upstream, have to be avoided in the future. And certainly, again, the concern of water contamination, all of which are areas of community concern that could be dealt with by more involvement in community watersheds. So I guess my question is, are you willing to work with us in a collaborative way in the Cowichan Valley to set up some meetings and try to look at the issue of watersheds?
Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, on the letter, we actually got to work on that right away. The answer is this. We actually had the Deputy Minister responded to the letter during the interregnum, because, of course, at that time, MLAs can't respond, ministers can't respond. So it would be typical practice, if it's during the interregnum, that a deputy would respond on behalf of the minister. And so he responded on the minister's behalf on May 23rd. So insofar as the questions around the Cowichan watershed, it's something that we are highly interested in, but first of all, in terms of the allocation decisions, that's the responsibility of Forest Lands Natural Resource Operations. However, the Ministry of the Environment is participating on the Cowichan Watershed Board, or with the Cowichan Watershed Board, and in fact we provided $15,000 to support a governance pilot. And in addition to that, as we look ahead to bringing in the modernization of the Water Sustainability, of the Water Act, so the Water Sustainability Act, the new act will enable innovative governance structures, and a really good example of that would be the current Okanagan Water Board. And so there should be opportunities under that new act to see the kind of community involvement in governance that the member is seeking.